2019, a financial researcher named Sarah Newcomb ran a study on why people with identical incomes end up in completely different financial situations. Same paycheck, wildly different outcomes. Her conclusion wasn't about discipline or intelligence. It was about the invisible daily decisions that never feel significant in the moment, but silently determine everything over time. Most people believe building wealth requires finding the right opportunity, the right stock, the right moment, the right information someone else doesn't have yet. That belief feels logical. It also keeps you searching for something that doesn't exist while the actual mechanism works quietly in the background, without you. So, what is actually separating the people who build real security from the ones who don't? It's not income. It's not luck. It's a specific set of habits so ordinary they barely register as decisions. That's what this video is about. Because if you've never understood why the math seems like it should be working by now, and it doesn't feel like it is, the answer isn't hidden in some opportunity you missed. It's sitting inside the daily choices you've already normalized. My name is Alex, and if you've ever felt like you're doing everything right and still falling behind, stay with this, because the gap between people who build wealth and people who don't almost never comes down to salary. I'm going to show you exactly where the money is quietly leaving and how the compounding works in both directions. Once you understand that, you'll stop looking for a better opportunity and start seeing the one hiding inside your current habits. And the clearest way to see this is to put two people side by side. Same salary, same city, completely different planets. Here's something that sounds impossible until you actually run the numbers. Two people, same employer, same title, same direct deposit hitting their accounts on the same Friday every 2 weeks. By the time they're both 36, one of them has built $340,000 in investments. The other has $11,000. The gap between them isn't explained by a promotion, an inheritance, or a lucky stock pick. It's explained by something far quieter and far more uncomfortable to look at. Meet James and Tyler. Both work as project managers at a mid-sized logistics company in Columbus, Ohio. Both earn around $72,000 a year. Both have been at the company for roughly a decade. On paper, they are the same person. James drives a 2017 Honda Accord he paid off 2 years ago, and he brings lunch to work 3 or 4 days a week. His apartment is comfortable but not impressive. He set up automatic transfers to his retirement account and a brokerage account the first month he started working, and he's never really thought about them since. His life doesn't look like a financial success story. It just looks like a pretty normal life. Tyler's life looks a little sharper from the outside. Newer car, a lease he rolled over into another lease when the first one ended. Nicer apartment in a building with a rooftop. He orders in most nights because after a full day of work, cooking feels like one task too many. He checks his investment app occasionally, usually after seeing something about the market on social media. He's moved money around a few times, chasing better returns. He's planning to get serious about saving next year, or maybe the year after, once things settle down a little. You already know how this ends, but the number is still worth sitting with. By 36, James has $340,000 in investments. Tyler has $11,000. The difference between them, $329,000, is not the result of better information or better luck. It's the result of a gap that opened slowly, almost invisibly, and then compounded. Here's what makes this hard to accept. Tyler isn't making irrational decisions in the moment. The lease made sense when he signed it. The apartment felt like a reasonable upgrade for where he was in his career. The takeout is genuinely more convenient. Each individual choice is defensible. And the problem is what those choices add up to across 10 years, and then 20, and then 30. James isn't depriving himself either. This is the part that gets missed. He's not eating sad lunches and driving a rust bucket to maximize his savings rate. He's just not optimizing for how things look. He's optimizing for something that won't show up until later. The 2017 Accord gets him to work. The lunch he packed costs him about $6. The automatic transfer happens whether he thinks about it or not. None of it feels like a sacrifice in the moment. It just feels like a Tuesday. That's the mechanism, not intensity, not sacrifice. Just consistency applied in the right direction, repeated across enough Tuesdays that the math has room to do what it does. Now here's the question worth asking. If the gap isn't about income, and it clearly isn't, then what's actually driving it? Because Tyler isn't uninformed. He knows what an index fund is. He's heard the advice. Most people in his position have. And yet the gap still opens. still compounds, still becomes $329,000 before either of them fully registers what happened. The answer starts one layer deeper than habits. It starts with the story most people are unconsciously running about what building wealth actually requires, and why that story keeps them on Tyler's path, no matter how much they earn. That story has a name, and it might be the most expensive lie in personal finance. The most expensive belief in personal finance doesn't come from bad advice. It comes from a story that feels completely reasonable, right up until you do the math. The story goes like this: wealth is something you unlock. There's a moment, a move, a piece of information that separates the people who make it from the people who don't. And if you could just find that thing, the right stock, the right crypto entry point, the right connection, everything would finally click into place. It's a compelling story. It's also the reason most people never actually build anything. Think about what that belief does to your behavior. It keeps you scanning, keeps you waiting, keeps you feeling like the real move is always just around the corner. So the boring stuff, the automatic transfer, the paid off car, the packed lunch, feels like settling. Now, like you're playing small while other people are playing the real game. That feeling is the trap, and it's an extraordinarily well-designed one. Here's where the data gets uncomfortable. A large-scale study tracking over 10,000 millionaires in the United States found that 79% of them received zero inheritance, nothing passed down, no head start. A third of them never earned a six-figure salary in a single year of their working lives. And their most common careers weren't hedge fund managers or tech founders. They were engineers, accountants, teachers, nurses, people with stable, unglamorous jobs who made consistent, unglamorous decisions across a very long stretch of time. The number that should stop you cold is this one. And the median time it took those 10,000 people to build genuine wealth was 28 years. Not a hot tip, not a market cycle. 28 years of showing up, contributing, not panicking, and not changing the plan every time something more exciting appeared on their screen. That's not the story that gets told. And there's a reason for that. Volatility is interesting. Consistency is not. A 30% crypto run in 60 days generates content, conversation, and FOMO. An index fund that quietly returns an average of 7% annually for 3 decades generates almost nothing worth posting about, and approximately $2.4 million on a $2,000 monthly contribution. One of those outcomes fills your feed, the other fills your retirement account. Let's follow the incentive, and the pattern makes perfect sense. The financial media, the trading apps, the influencers with the whiteboards. None of them make money when you automate a transfer to a boring index fund and forget about it for 20 years. They make money when you're engaged, when you're curious, when you're convinced the next move matters. The excitement is not accidental. It's the product. This is what Tyler was caught in. Not stupidity, not laziness. A perfectly rational response to an environment specifically designed to make the boring path feel like the wrong one. Every time he opened his investment app and saw something moving, the implicit message was the same. Pay attention, act. This matters right now. And so he did. He moved things around. He chased. He stayed engaged with his money in exactly the way that statistically produces worse outcomes than doing almost nothing at all. James, meanwhile, was boring in exactly the right way. Set it, automate it, ignore it. Not because he had better information, but because he had stopped looking for the secret and started trusting the mechanism. That shift in orientation is harder than it sounds. We are not wired for 28 years of patience. We are wired to respond to signals, to act on new information, to feel like we're doing something. The market knows this. The apps know this. The entire architecture of modern financial media is built on this, which means choosing the boring path isn't passive. It's actually one of the more active decisions you can make, a daily choice to not react. But understanding the lie is only half of it. Because even when you stop chasing the wrong thing, there are still quiet drains pulling money out of your life every single month. Leaks so normalized, you've probably stopped noticing them entirely. And until you plug the leaks, the engine has nothing to actually build with. That's where defense comes in. And the first place to look is the one sitting in your driveway. Most wealth doesn't disappear in one bad decision. It drains out through 2 holes so familiar, they've stopped feeling like problems. The first one is sitting in your driveway. The average new car payment in the United States hits $748 a month in 2026. That number gets normalized fast. Dealerships are good at that. They don't talk about the total cost. They talk about the monthly payment. Can you handle $748 a month? For most people earning a decent salary, the honest answer is yes, technically. And that's exactly where the damage starts. Because the question was never whether you can handle the payment. The question is what that payment is actually costing you across time. Run the math. $748 a month. Redirect it into a low-cost index fund instead, at a 7% average annual return over 30 years. That's $1.7 million. Not a rounding error, not a hypothetical. $1.7 million. Sitting on the other side of a decision most people make because they wanted something newer, cleaner, and more impressive than what they already had. Tyler leases. He's on his second consecutive lease, which means he has had a car payment every single month for the better part of 6 years and has zero ownership to show for it. Each time the lease ends, the dealership makes the rollover feel seamless, almost invisible. That's not an accident. The goal is to keep the payment permanent while rotating the asset underneath it. Tyler drives a nice car. He will always drive a nice car. And he will very likely always have a car payment, which means he will very likely always be transferring a significant portion of his wealth-building capacity directly to a financing company every single month. James drives a 2017 Accord he paid off 2 years ago. It's not exciting. It gets him where he's going. The money that would have gone to a car payment goes somewhere else instead. That's the entire difference. Now here's the second leap, and this one is subtler because it comes dressed as responsible decision-making. When you apply for a mortgage, the bank tells you how much you're approved for. That number feels like guidance. It feels like someone with a spreadsheet and a risk model has looked at your finances and told you what's safe. What it actually represents is the maximum amount the bank is willing to lend you, given their risk parameters, which have almost nothing to do with your comfort, your flexibility, or your life outside the monthly payment. The gap between what the bank will lend you and what you can actually live well within, that gap is where your financial margin goes. Not dramatic, not all at once. It just quietly disappears into a mortgage payment that leaves no room for anything else. No room for a job change, no room for a medical bill, no room for the kind of breathing space that makes the rest of your financial decisions less desperate. This is the pattern. 2 normalized expenses, a car payment, and an oversized mortgage. That together can consume the entire margin between a salary that should be working and a financial life that actually feels like it is. Most people carrying both of them don't feel like they're making a mistake. They feel like they're living normally. That's the most expensive part. Plugging these leaks doesn't require an extreme lifestyle overhaul. It requires recognizing that the payment that feels manageable today is compounding against you, just as reliably as an investment compounds for you. Every month you carry it, it's not just costing you that month's payment. It's costing you what that payment would have become. Once the big leaks are under control, the dynamic shifts, because now you're not just stopping the bleeding, you're starting to accumulate something. And that's when the small daily habits start to matter more than most people expect. The math on this is surprisingly straightforward. And it starts with where Americans are quietly spending more money than almost any other category in their budget. Nobody thinks of lunch as a financial decision. That's exactly why it's such an expensive one. For the first time in recorded consumer history, Americans are now spending more than half of their total food budget, 55%, on food away from home. Not groceries, not home-cooked meals, restaurants, delivery apps, drive-thrus, and the $11 salad from the place downstairs. This isn't a minor cultural shift. It's a structural change in how money moves out of people's lives. And it happened so gradually that most people never registered it as a choice they were making. Here's the number that makes it concrete. The average home-cooked meal costs around $5 per person. The average meal eaten away from home costs $23. That's not a small difference. That's a 4-to-1 ratio playing out across breakfast, lunch, and dinner, day after day, in a way that feels completely normal, because everyone around you is doing the same thing. Tyler's week looks something like this. Coffee from the shop on the corner because the line moves fast, and he's already running late. Lunch ordered to the office because the afternoon is packed, and leaving feels inefficient. Dinner from an app because cooking at 8:30 at night after a full day just isn't happening. Each decision is reasonable in isolation. Together, they're quietly running somewhere between $400 and $600 a month above what the same meals would cost made at home. That's not a character flaw. That's a convenience tax. And the modern economy has become extraordinarily good at collecting it. And James isn't a monk about this. He eats out. He orders in occasionally. But his default is different. He cycles through 4 or 5 meals he knows how to make without thinking too hard. His grocery bill is predictable because his meal rotation is predictable. Before he buys anything new at the store, he checks what's already in the fridge. The meals aren't exciting. That's almost the point. Decision fatigue is real. And when eating well at home requires creativity and effort every single night, most people eventually stop doing it. James removed the creativity requirement. Same meals, same ingredients, same low friction. It works because it's boring enough to sustain. This is the same principle that applies to everything else in the small spending category. Friction is a filter. The easier it is to spend money, the more money gets spent. Check one-click purchasing, saved card details, same-day delivery. Every layer of convenience removed from the transaction is a layer of reflection removed from the decision. You don't pause. You don't weigh it. You just buy. The fix isn't discipline. Discipline is unreliable. The fix is reintroducing friction deliberately. Shop in person instead of online for non-essential purchases. Add items to a cart and wait 48 hours before checking out. Delete the saved payment information so completing a purchase requires one extra step. These aren't dramatic interventions. They're small architectural changes to your spending environment that make the pause happen automatically, rather than requiring willpower you don't always have. Now put a number on the daily version of this. Spending just $27.40 a day on small, unplanned purchases, a coffee, a grabbed lunch, a random add to cart, adds up to $10,000 across a single year. $10,000 that pass through your hands in amounts too small to feel significant, on days too ordinary to remember, on things you probably couldn't name 6 months later. That $10,000 invested annually at a 7% return over 25 years becomes $670,000. Not because you made a bold financial move, because you stopped making 100 small, unconsidered ones. This is where James and Tyler's gap widens past the point of easy recovery. Not in the big decisions. Those are visible enough to at least debate. In the small ones. The ones that never feel like decisions at all. But plugging leaks and cutting daily drag only gets you so far. At some point, defense alone doesn't build anything. You need an engine, something that actively works in your direction, whether you're paying attention or not. And building that engine comes down to one simple shift in the order of operations that most people have exactly backwards. Almost any other category in their budget. There is one sentence that statistically outperforms most professional investment strategies. It is also the least interesting sentence in finance. Buy a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. Automate your contributions, do nothing. That's it. That's the engine. And the reason most people never actually run it isn't because they don't know about it. It's because it feels too passive to be real. Surely there's a better move. Surely someone with more information, better timing, a sharper read on the market is doing something more sophisticated. That feeling is precisely what keeps the gap open between James and Tyler. Not ignorance. The suspicion that simple can't possibly be enough. Here's the order of operations most people use. Paycheck arrives, bills get paid, life gets lived. Whatever is left at the end of the month goes towards savings. The problem is that in most months, not much is left. Lifestyle expands to meet available income with remarkable consistency. The savings number stays small, gets skipped occasionally, and never really builds into anything with momentum. Wealth builders run it in reverse. Paycheck arrives. A fixed amount moves automatically to savings and investments before anything else happens. Then life gets lived on what remains. The money is gone before the spending decisions begin, which means it was never available to spend in the first place. You cannot talk yourself out of a transfer that already happened at 6 a.m. while you were still asleep. This is what pay yourself first actually means in practice. Not a motivational concept, a mechanical intervention in the sequence of events. James has automated transfers set for the day his paycheck clears. A percentage goes to his 401k. That's his employer-sponsored retirement account. A fixed amount goes to a brokerage account holding a single low-cost S&P 500 index fund. The rest lands in checking and covers everything else. He doesn't decide whether to save each month. The decision was made once, years ago, and it executes automatically regardless of how he feels about it. Look at what that single index fund actually does over time. The S&P 500, that's the 500 largest publicly traded companies in the United States, has returned an average of roughly 10% annually before inflation over the past several decades. adjust for inflation, and you're closer to 7% in real terms. At that rate, $2,000 a month invested consistently over 30 years becomes approximately $2.4 million. You contributed $720,000 of that. The remaining $1.68 million came from time, not skill, not timing, not picking the right companies, just time, applied to a consistent contribution. Tyler's approach looks more active, but produces less. He checks his portfolio regularly. He's moved allocations around based on what seemed promising. He paused contributions for a few months during a volatile stretch because it felt like the wrong time to be buying. Each of those decisions felt rational in the moment. Collectively, they interrupted the one process that doesn't require any of that. Every pause, every reallocation, every moment of trying to be clever cost him compounding days he will never get back. Here's the signal worth remembering. If a financial opportunity is being pitched to you with urgency, limited window, act now, this cycle won't last. That urgency is information, not about the opportunity, about the pitch. Genuine wealth building has no urgency because it doesn't need any. It works slowly, invisibly, and without your constant attention. The excitement is almost always the warning label. This doesn't mean you never make adjustments. It means the bar for overriding a boring automated system should be extremely high, because the boring automated system, left alone, is the thing that actually works. Everything more interesting than that is, statistically speaking, a step down in expected outcome. James isn't a financial genius, and he's just someone who stopped waiting for a better strategy and started trusting a proven one. The automation does the work. The index absorbs the market. Time does the compounding. And when you follow both James and Tyler forward from here, past the habits, past the automations, past the daily decisions that never felt like decisions, what you find at the other end is not just a number. It's two completely different versions of what a life at 55 can actually look like. James is on track to have somewhere between $1.2 and $1.5 million by the time he's 55. Not because he earned more, not because he got lucky, because he made a series of unremarkable decisions consistently, across a long enough period of time that the math had room to work. Tyler is on track to still be stressed, still optimizing for the month he's in, still feeling like the real move is just around the corner. The gap between them isn't talent, it's margin. That word is worth sitting with. Margin is the distance between what you earn and what you need. It's what lets you absorb a car repair without panic. It's what gives you the option to walk away from a job that's grinding you down. It's what turns a salary into actual freedom, rather than just a number that arrives and disappears every 2 weeks. There's a few things that explain most of what you saw here. Boring habits compound just as reliably as interesting mistakes do, just in the opposite direction. The payment that feels manageable today is quietly compounding against you. Automation removes the decision, and removing the decision is the point. Excitement in finance is usually a cost disguised as an opportunity. The question worth sitting with this week isn't whether this works. The question is which direction your daily decisions are currently compounding, and whether that's actually the direction you chose.